Author T.C. Boyle spoke at Fowler Hall on Tuesday as a part of Purdue University Library's Distinguished Lecture Series.
For over 3 decades, T.C. Boyle has been willing to represent our limitations and possibilities by refusing to offer easy answers. Rather, he documents the hard truths in the grotesque but joyously multifaceted world we live in, one that could only be dreamed up by a larger-than-life writer, willing to sift through the ashes of our less-than-perfect histories. T.C. Boyle is the author of 22 books of fiction, including most recently The Women, Wild Child, and When the Killing's Done. His work has been translated into more than 24 languages, and his stories have appeared in many major American magazines, including The New Yorker, Harper's, Esquire, The Atlantic Monthly, Playboy, and the Paris Review, to name only a few. He has been the recipient of a number of literary awards, including the PEN/Faulkner Prize for Fiction and the PEN/Malamud Award for Achievement in the Short Story. His work has been widely anthologized, including multiple stories in the Best American Short Stories and the O. Henry Prize series. He received a PhD in 19th century British literature from the University of Iowa and his MFA from the University of Iowa Writers' Workshop. He's been a member of the English department at the University of Southern California since 1978, where he is a distinguished professor of English. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to welcome to the stage Mr. T.C. Boyle.
During his presentation, Mr. Boyle elaborated on the story behind his new novel, When the Killing's Done.
Meanwhile, on Santa Cruz Island, which is the largest, directly across from Santa Barbara, it's 4 times bigger than Manhattan. No one lives there. It's our one part of our national park. Half owned by, 90% owned by the Nature Conservancy and 10% by us, but it will all be given to us eventually. There was sheep ranching. These islands were individually owned until recently. And the sheep, as you know, chew everything right down to the dirt. So as soon as the TNC and the Park Service got possession of these, in the 1980s and into the 1990s, they removed all the sheep. No problem. The sheep had been going back and forth anyway, you know. And of course, I suppose, you know, some of them became lamb chops, but this is unavoidable in our society. However, a further problem arose. There were pigs, feral pigs, introduced in the 1850s by the sheep ranchers, and these pigs now had gone wild, and they were tearing up the native vegetation and also eating the acorns and chewing up all the oak trees, so we had no mature oak trees. So it was decided that the pigs had to be removed. However, there were unforeseen consequences. The pigs could not be removed to the shore because they had been a discrete population, and who knows what diseases they might have bred up, which then could be communicated to our hogs. So, a New Zealand company named ProHunt was hired at the cost of $7 million to come and shoot 5,500 wild pigs and leave them to rot on the island. Of course, people protested. And in my telling, it's the very same guy who protested the rats is now protesting this. But there are even further consequences. The invasive fennel. This is anise that you use in your cooking, fennel seed that you use in sausage. It's theorized that the sheepmen making sausage had brought some fennel in a kitchen garden, it got loose, and now it's wild, it's an invasive on Santa Cruz Island. Well, with the sheep kept it chewed right down. Now the sheep are gone. We've got thickets of it as big as this stage and 20 feet high. Meanwhile, in the absence of the bald eagles, their rivals, the golden eagles, flew in from the shore and colonized the islands where they'd never been before. The golden eagles are mainly hunt land animals, whereas bald eagles mainly are piscivorous. All right, so what did they eat? Well, they ate these delicious piglets. Who could resist? However, once the fennel grew into these thickets, the piglets hid. And now you have hungry bald eagles. What are they going to eat? Now comes the poster animal of this whole enterprise. It is the dwarf island fox, a unique species known nowhere else in the world. This animal is 4 to 6 pounds, the size of a house cat. Not your house cats, which are bloated with kibble and lying on the couch right now, coughing up fur balls, but a small cat in good shape. And I have held them in my arms with the biologist. They look like Disney created them. It's the cutest thing in the world. And they're called naive. Naive in that they've never had predation, so they're not afraid of us, and they never even looked up. So meanwhile, the golden eagles were preying on these foxes, and If the problem hadn't been discovered within the last 5 years, they would be gone now. That'd be the end of them. A biologist showed me a picture on her laptop of a golden eagle chick, and I mean, it's this big with claws the size of your hands, proudly sitting there with the remains of 20 foxes around it, one of which had a radio collar, which is how they discovered the problem. All right. So, the biologist came in, trapped all the goldens, which isn't easy, and moved them to the Sierras and reintroduced balds from Alaska. And now, only 5 years later, the foxes are thriving, the goldens are happy in the Sierras, and the balds are back. So, that's the story I'm telling, and when the killing's done. But of course, there's a lot of contention in such a story.
Mr. Boyle took time to read a passage from his collection of short stories entitled The Lie.
The clock inched forward. Clover got dressed, put on her makeup, and took her coffee mug out to the car and was gone. There was nothing heroic in what I did next, dealing with the baby in my own car and the stalled nose-to-tail traffic that made the 3 miles to the babysitter seem like a trek across the wastelands of the earth. It was just life, that was all. But as soon as I handed Xana over to Violetta at the door of her apartment that threw up a wall of cooking smells, tearful Telemundo dialogue, and the diachronic yapping of her 4 chihuahuas, I slammed myself into the car and called in sick. Or no, not sick. My sick days were gone, I reminded myself. And my personal days, too. My boss picked up the phone. Iron House Productions, he said, his voice digging out from under the R's. He had trouble with R's. He had trouble with English, for that matter. Hello, Radko? Yes, it is he. Who is it now? It's me, Lonnie. Let me guess, you are sick.
After his presentation, Mr. Boyle took time to sign books and answer questions for those who attended.